Hi guys, it's your girl Mantate. Welcome to another episode of The Good News. So the good news is that there's so many young people out here that are really just doing the most in response to the socio-economic impact of COVID-19. And I'm very excited today to share an initiative that's happening in Shanva. And the excitement for me is not just the fact that it's homegrown. I mean, it's amazing to see young Zimbabweans standing up to, the challenges that are affecting a lot of these marginalized communities around us, but also just looking at these guys are specifically responding to the challenges of persons with disability. And that's something that's so important to me because in a lot of instances where the lockdown or the pandemic itself is actually affecting a lot of people, persons with disability are almost double or more affected than the average person. And I think it comes with the fact that they already have structural limitations, issues of access because of the disability they have. So when the lockdown is affected, there's always that question of where do they get their food. So I just want to share an initiative by Wellington Bakaimani from Simuka Upenye Integrated Youth Academy in Shanva. The reason why this initiative was started, specifically why they decided to feed persons with disability, was he talks about how he was looking at the market and looking at how a lot of these guys actually got food from beans, and the fact that we're now like on lockdown, no one's throwing food in the trash, no one is throwing away their takeaway remains and things like that. It means that in honest truth, they don't have food. Number one, there's a problem. For me, I have a problem with that someone has to settle for food in the trash because they don't have access to food. They don't have any means of, getting proper food for themselves. That's a very big problem. And it goes to just reflect the level of poverty in our country. But beyond that, I'm also looking at a situation, now that no one is buying food from restaurants and throwing away their remains and everything, where are they getting this food? So what Wellington then decided to do was, I'm just going to be cooking in my house and actually go and give those guys, because I know them, I see them in the streets, right? So he started cooking food in his own kitchen at home and feeding and actually going to distribute to those people in the streets. And one of the things that he talks about is how he realized that now there was a growing interest because a lot of them were now coming for the food, but the truth is he didn't have so much. So what he then did was he decided to turn his office into a kitchen where he was cooking whatever he had because he'd stocked them for the lockdown. He started cooking for those guys, and he talks about how initially he was just feeding 4 people every day, so he was providing them with lunch. But then as the numbers increased, the demand was now also increasing, and he ran out of the groceries that he had. But one thing I like about him is that he didn't stop when the groceries ran out. So he comes online. I saw some of his Facebook posts as well where he's talking about how guys have been actually feeding this type of people in my community for this number of days, but the truth is I've run out of groceries, and I really appreciate you guys coming in if you can, so that we continue supporting them because they need this food. So people actually responded positively, sharing his story and just encouraging him and actually acknowledging what he was doing. And he talks about how Beatrice from Roots actually reached out to him and said that we're bringing 30 hampers that you can actually distribute to people around the community that don't have food, but also just looking at boosting your kitchen so that you continue cooking for those guys that you're providing food with. And that's exciting for me because he says of the 30 hampers that we received, he actually gave away 24 families, but also just remained with some of the groceries and continues to feed persons with disability on a daily basis. And right now he talks about how his kitchen is actually supporting 12 people daily with lunch meals, and that's actually great for me. And more than that, he talks about how and then reached out to a group that they normally work with that's in Bindura, and actually talk to them about how if they can organize themselves, they are willing to sort of like share the resources that they have to ensure that a kitchen is also supported in Bindura. And they opened another kitchen in Bindura, which for me is great and actually shows the level of if there's commitment, like if there's commitment, consistency, there is potential, to expand and to grow. And I'm just thinking about how if they really receive so much more support, they might actually be able to do bigger. And more than that, also he talks about how he actually applied for a micro initiative grant under the Friends of Butter, where he actually got awarded $1,000 to actually buy grocery hampers for different communities, but also just looking at how do they boost their kitchen so that they continue the work that they're doing. And one thing that I'm really excited about, he says that from the targeted communities that they're looking at, some of them are child-led, some of them are led by the elderly, and 7 of those families that they managed to support actually have one person that's actually mentally affected. So I think that's powerful for me because in our efforts to kind of respond to the problems of hunger in our community, it's not every day that we stop to think, oh, okay, there is this particular place where there is a child living with a disability, or there is a mentally affected person and things like that. So I feel very encouraged to see them specifically targeting vulnerable groups, even within that vulnerable population that we have. And also just talking to him about this whole initiative, he talks about how the problem is not really just food in a lot of these communities. There's also issues of information. When it comes to us talking about how we need to continuously sanitize our hands, we need to wash our hands with soap, we need to keep our hands sanitized and things like that. People don't understand. He talks about the people in the rural communities, and I think it's very true. Like, what came to a lot of people were directives to say we're on lockdown, we need to sanitize our hands, we need to do this, we need to do this. But there was not really that level of conversation that talks about, this is why you need to sanitize, this is why you need to make sure your hands are clean. So he was talking about how in a lot of these communities, okay, we've got the police and soldiers on the ground, but that's what people are scared of. People are scared of the soldiers. So when the soldiers are around, I'm going to stay put at home. But as soon as they're not there, or when I know, okay, around this time they're not there, people are just going on with their lives. So really, the bigger danger is not just the police or the soldiers, as a lot of people think it is, but also looking at the virus itself. And I think also because there's this issue of the cases in Zim, there was a period when we had almost over a week where we didn't have new cases. It gives people this perception that, oh my God, the COVID-19 is over in Zim, or at least it's almost over, so I'm not really in danger. But you was talking about the need to educate beyond just giving directives to say, guys, we're on lockdown, this is what you're not expected to do, or arresting someone for failing to follow the regulations of a lockdown, but looking at how do we educate communities about the value of sanitizing, also trying to interpret what this COVID-19 sort of like translates to in the local language, and not just in the local language, but looking at the local context of people that have to go to get water in the dam every day, people that get water from rivers and things like that, to say, what is the value of social distancing? Why is it so important for you guys to act in this way? But more than just this, I love that they don't think of it as just a need to educate people. But one of the things that he speaks about is how they already have kind of an initiative that was existing where they were producing detergents. So they're like, oh, okay, guys, can we kind of channel some of these detergents or the dishwashers that we're producing to kind of like boost the sanitation within our community, so that people have access to water and dishwashers that they can use to actually wash their hands. And one of the projects that they're currently doing is one where they're specifically producing detergents, and they're looking at producing sanitizer and producing dishwashers for communities, and they're specifically looking to support at least 40 PWDs, persons with disability. And I think, again, that's powerful. I love the consistency in the target population they're serving. And I specifically wanted to talk to you guys about this because I feel there's a need for us to really answer that question, to say, what are the challenges that are being faced by persons with disability beyond the challenges that the average person is facing right now of, okay, they don't have food, they don't have this, but what other challenges are specifically being faced by persons with disabilities when we're looking at access as well for this food that a lot of people are distributing food hampers, but do these PWDs actually get something? How do they access this and things like that? And I want us to also just look at their page on Facebook. If you go on Facebook and look for Simuka Openya Integrated Youth Academy, please reach out to these guys and let them know how you can support, because I think it's very important that we sustain the initiative that they're doing, because they're feeding people every day. And if suddenly they run out of groceries and they need to stop, we need to ask ourselves to say, what will happen to those people that have grown to depend on these guys? But also just looking at how do we design sustainable projects that go beyond the now, when the pandemic is over and everyone goes back to their jobs or whatever it is that they do. Who's going to keep supporting these guys? So I just wanted to give a shout out to these guys and say thank you so much for, showing that young people can do it and being able to sort of like champion, the cause for persons with disability. It really inspires me a lot, because I'm very passionate about persons with disability. And also just to say that we also need to potentially reach out to other persons with disability that we know in our communities, young influencers, and ask them really what they think can be a response to some of the challenges they're facing, but also looking at how persons with disabilities can actually champion their issues, because I feel like there is more power when it comes from the people that are actually affected. But other than that, thank you so much, guys, for continuing to support the show. We talk about good news because honestly, young people are rising up to the task of responding to the socio-economic impact of the pandemic. And I just want to say that it's reflective of how much young people can do so much in our community, but also just looking at the fact that they always say that young people are about talking and all that, But that's not what we're about. We're about responding to the challenges in our community and seeing young people do it. I hope it inspires you to also do more. So thank you so much for joining me. Looking forward to another episode of The Good News Is with your girl Mantate. Thank you.